This particular fly is one that I came up with several years ago. Designed it originally for smallmouth bass. In the time since I've been tying it and varying, it's always tied the same, but it does use one variation, and that variation is eyeballs. The one that I'm going to tie today will use just a regular sized Wapsi presentation eye, which is a plated brass. Another eye that I can use and do, depending on what I'm designing the fly for, is also an hourglass design, but this is turned aluminum. It's half the weight of the brass. And you can tell it's set for insets. I've got those here. And I will tie this from a size 3/0 down to as small as a size 10. And there are presentation style eyes available for that. Also, we'll use a colored bead chain on different sizes. The hook size can vary, the eye shape can vary, but the materials never do. It is tied using a combination of my two favorite materials, which are Spey feathers and pine squirrel. We're going to do the purple today. The purple has just become commercially available. For quite a few years there, I was the only guy who had it, and it used to drive steelheaders crazy. And it used to drive some bass guys crazy too. But it is now commercially available. I am tying again with a monofilament, and I'm going to start on the bend back. I want to get a little closer to the eye of the hook this time. And I want to lay a little bit of a base. One of the reasons, even though this fly was created for smallmouth bass and was called the smallmouth Spey, I now call it the universal Spey because it's caught everything. I started with the salmon hook because of the bend back eye. I can mount an eyeball or dumbbell eyes on a regular round shank hook, but it just seemed to me, why to go to all that trouble when you have that nice little platform on a salmon fly hook, you know, that you can just reach out and tag. Come on. It wants to come undone more than it wants to get done, so let's see. That's fairly firm on there. He said just before it began to unravel. A few figure eights. That really won't turn too easily by itself, but just to make sure, I'm going to hit it with a little Sally Hansen's just to help cement it in place. And if you'll notice, when you hit clear mono on a hook with a fingernail polish or a good head cement, it virtually disappears. One of the advantages of tying with mono. Okay, now we're going to go back. Just taking some loose wraps to get back. And this is another fly that I like to tag. Once again, I think it adds some additional sparkle at the end of the fly. What I've got here is silver. What I would normally do on a gold or a nickel finished hook. I haven't talked about the hook yet. We get this tied on, I will stop and tell you about it. I like to use, on this particular fly, particularly tying a purple, I've got a purple Mirage tinsel that I would use. The hook that I'm using on this is, I will refer to it as the 20 series. It starts at 2050, goes 2051, 52, 53, and then it skips to 55 and then 57 and 59, but it is the Daiichi Alec Jackson Spey hook. And it's one of the most beautifully shaped hooks I've ever seen. It is available from Daiichi in 5 different sizes. This particular one we're tying on today is a 1.5 up through a 3/0. I think it goes as small as a 7 perhaps. It's available in 5 different colors, gold finish, nickel finish, black, blue, and regular bronze. Okay, we have got the tag in. We want to whip finish. And this is one of the reasons I use the large Mattarelli, because it allows me to get around and to be able to get a whip finish back to the back of one of these long hooks. A regular Mattarelli is a real pain if you're trying to do that. It's just too short. My general tagging philosophy on some of the flies that I do is that I start where other people would stop. And I take it way down into the bend of the hook. I want that additional flash, and with the materials, and you'll see how that shapes out when we do this, with the materials on this fly, they could overshadow it if it was further up the body. So we take it deep into the bend, back up, and tie it off. And that ought to work. But I'll do a couple of more just because I've been caught out today. Okay, now we're ready to build the rest of the fly. The first element that goes on is going to be squirrel tail. We're tying with pine squirrel, and this is the natural pine squirrel tail dyed purple, but you can tell that the color variation really didn't come through too good. It's kind of a muddy brown. So instead of using the pine squirrel, what I'm going to use is gray squirrel dyed purple. And one of the things you'll notice is that there's no hair stacker sitting in front of me. For this particular fly, I don't use a hair stacker. And the reason is because I like that the rounded shape that I get from the tail if the hair is left unstacked. I will clean it out. We're going to measure it. We want it just slightly longer than the gap of the hook. That's us right there. Always with tying squirrel, a few soft wraps before you start putting any pressure on it. It doesn't spin like deer hair, but it will spin. And when it does, it becomes a genuine pain in the ass. Then clip off the excess. A few more wraps to stabilize it and tie it down. And it doesn't matter if you've got some loose pieces like this one sticking up, because I guarantee you, you won't see them once the pine squirrel's on there. Okay, now that I've got it tied down, I like to come back, kick it around the back a couple of times. And that way I get just a little bit of rise in it. I don't want it sticking up a whole bunch. Okay, now we're ready for pine squirrel. This is a pine squirrel. I believe the source of this for Wapsi is somewhere up in Canada, and I'm going to look to the edges to see if I can't get a little bit lighter color, because the pine squirrel's natural coloration is this is white and this is dark, and you can see that there is a difference in the coloration across that squirrel. In this case, I wanted a lighter one, so I went and got one. And you want to, it doesn't matter with pine squirrel, but you almost want, your hairs sitting back, pointing back. Fancy, formal fly tying vocabulary. And you strip off a little bit so that you got a little bit of hide to tie down. And you put that kind of right alongside where the tail is tied in. And you tie it off. Or tie it down, tie it in. Take it back a little bit further. I want to start wrapping where that tail is tied down. There we go. Now we're going to come all the way forward to behind the eyes. And whip finish. I mentioned about the variations in this fly. The pine squirrel comes in 8 different colors, Spey hackle, infinite number of colors. there's a wide range of sizes of hooks. It doesn't have to be this hook. It's just that this is what I started tying it on. It's what I continue to tie it on. So we began to look around at what this thing would catch, and in different color variations, excuse me, technical glitch here, different color variations and different size hooks, it has caught its original target, which was the smallmouth, plus it's caught black bass, most of the other members of the panfish family. Tied in white, it's a very effective crappie pattern. Did I mention all 5 species of Atlantic salmon? Steelhead, Pacific salmon, steelhead, and Atlantic salmon. Tied on nickel-finished hooks, it has caught redfish, specks, and flounder in salt water. It's a very, very effective fly just because of the way it works in the water and the water that it moves, which I think attracts the predators to it. And so my sponsors recommended that I change its name to Universal Spey, since it seems to be able to catch just about anything it's thrown at. So it is now called the Universal Spey. And again, it's not a complex pattern at all. The material's a little different. A lot of people are still finding out about pine squirrel, but pine squirrel is readily available in 7 colors plus the natural skin. It's a Wapsi product available through any fly shop that does business with Wapsi. Okay, now the body is on, the tail is on, and what we're after now is the overwing. This is Spey hackle. It looks like just a regular neck until you pop the feathers, and then they show you what they can do, and they're pretty incredible. I was amazed when I first found them. Matter of fact, when I looked at it, I thought Dr. Whiting was skinning heron, but as it turns out, it's a chicken. Okay, now I like to begin to tie this in on the underside. Still got a little bit of leather showing from the squirrel. Let's go over that one more time. Okay. I like to tie this in on the bottom because usually I've got a better, longer reach from where the squirrel stopped out towards the eye. Nice flat place where I can get some bite on it. And I'll come back around the eyes and figure 8 it in just to make sure it's in good and tight. Okay. Trim off the excess. And try to get a couple of wraps if I can behind the eyeball, or figure 8 it, or however it wants to go on there, just to tie it down so I don't lose what I've got. And then back to the hard part of working with Spey, which is finding the central stem. And then you just simply begin to turn it on. And my theory is that you can't put too much of this on any one hook or fly. So just take as many turns as you can get without mashing down too many of the fibers. There's a technique you can use when you're wrapping back through hackle, even this stuff. If you kind of weave it in and out, it will tend not to bind down, and you'll get a pretty good turn with a good distribution of the fibers everywhere. And that's really what you're looking for. And like I said, you really cannot put too much of this on here. So try to use as much of that entire feather as you can. It doesn't matter if it kind of gets out ahead of itself, because you're going to tie it all back in and bring it all backwards anyway when you're through. And that's about as much as there is. clips there. Matter of fact, if you want to, you don't even have to clip off the excess on this one. Just get them damp, pull them all back, and tie them down real good. Get a whip on it. And it's finished. Might want to add a little more Sally Hansen's to it just to toughen up the finish knot, but that is the fly, smallmouth Spey. And you can get an idea of what your body is going to look like on that when it's going through the water. You're going to have the movement, slow pulsing of the squirrel, and then you're going to have these filaments just sort of dancing in the water all around it. It's a beautiful thing to see underwater.